You picture the fantasy. 5 minutes from Cinderella Castle, fireworks over your own roof, Epcot on a random Tuesday. Here's what that picture skips. Somewhere near those same parks, a woman who once played a Disney princess spent months sleeping in her car. And that isn't even the strangest thing about who actually controls this town. Number one isn't the one you'd guess. Subscribe now because by the end, you'll want the rest of this list too. None of this is trivia if you're actually weighing the move. The gap between what the postcard promises and what the paycheck allows is the same gap that decides whether this becomes the best decision you ever made, or the one that quietly drains you for a decade. So let's start with the people who don't get to weigh it at all. Because for them, this isn't a decision, it's a job requirement. Number one, the people who make the magic can't afford to live near it. Walt Disney World employs roughly 77,000 cast members, the largest single-site workforce in the country. Entry-level pay runs $15 to $20 an hour. A two-bedroom apartment in Osceola County runs $1,400 to $1,800 a month. Do that math against a part-time shift schedule, and the rent alone eats a third to half of a paycheck before groceries, gas, or a single trip to the parks that pay for it. Nobody chooses to work at the happiest place on earth expecting to also run that math every single month. But for a large share of the workforce that keeps the parks running, that's exactly the job. Jessica Cody worked at Walt Disney World from 2010 to 2014. She played Lady Tremaine. She played Pluto. When the company cut her hours, the math stopped working, so she moved into her 2005 Chevy Malibu, parked it in the West Clock cast lot at Magic Kingdom, and showered in the locker rooms. For months. She wasn't the only one out there. As she put it later, the company turned a blind eye. Disney's answer has been Flamingo Crossings, a workforce housing complex about 15 minutes from the resort. When it opened to regular cast members in December 2023, a shared bedroom and a two-bedroom unit ran roughly $869 a month. A second phase, further out along State Road 429, is expected to bring units starting near $466 a month. Groundbreaking happened in 2024, with move-ins targeted for 2026. It's progress. It's also an admission that the wage the company pays doesn't cover the rent the area demands. A survey published in November 2025 found that nearly half the local population had seriously considered moving because of housing costs. 42% said they were weighing leaving Florida altogether, and roughly 80% said rising housing costs were keeping them up at night. And it isn't only the veterans feeling it. Threads from current participants in the Disney College program describe being told to switch apartments on short notice, with little input in the decision. A quiet reminder that even where you sleep can depend on staying in the company's good graces. If a detail like that surprises you, that's exactly the kind of thing this channel digs for. Hit like now so more people actually see it, and let's keep going. That squeeze doesn't stop at the cast members either. Florida pollsters found something bigger waiting just outside the gates less than a year ago, and we're coming back to it before this list is over. But first, the part of this story almost nobody covers: who actually runs the town Disney built. Number 2. Your neighborhood's government was decided by a political feud you had nothing to do with. Most people who move here never think to ask who actually keeps the lights on, who dispatches the fire trucks, or who signs off on a new road. For over 50 years, the answer was Disney itself. The Reedy Creek Improvement District functioned as the company's own private government. Its own fire department, its own roads, its own power and utility system, all funded by roughly $105 million a year in internal taxes, plus another $58 million a year toward bond debt. Total bond liabilities, close to $1 billion. For 50 years, that arrangement mostly worked quietly in the background, the way infrastructure is supposed to, until it suddenly became the center of a very public political fight. In 2022, after Disney publicly opposed Florida's parental rights in education law, Governor Ron DeSantis moved to dissolve the district entirely. The expected math was simple: strip Disney of its private government, and the neighbors next door inherit the bill. Orange County's tax collector put a number on it: Property taxes could climb 20 to 25% for ordinary residents who'd never asked for any of this. And what makes this unusual isn't that a state government took over a company's private town. It's that 4 years later, Disney is still the one footing almost the entire bill. In February 2023, the legislature backed off full dissolution and instead renamed the district the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, with its board now appointed by the governor instead of Disney. Of roughly $185 million collected in property taxes in 2022, Disney alone paid more than $161 million of it, over 87 cents of every dollar. How about that? The fight didn't end quietly either. Hundreds of the district's own employees ended up owing more than $2 million combined in back taxes after the new board reclassified their Park Pass perks. By March 2024, Disney and the state settled their dueling lawsuits, and by June, Disney had committed to a $17 billion 20-year development deal, with at least $10 million set aside for what the agreement calls attainable housing. As of the district's most recent audit, total outstanding debt sits at $791.2 million, and the board approved chasing up to $175 million more in utility bonds in mid-2025. The district isn't shrinking. It's just being run by someone the residents never voted for. Number 3. Your guest room becomes a second job. Nobody in your family thinks of it this way, but the day they find out where you live, you've quietly picked up 3 unpaid roles: travel planner, shuttle driver, hotel manager. It starts small. An airport pickup here. A "can we crash for a few nights there?" It rarely stays small. The people who love you the most tend to be the worst at noticing when their vacation becomes your obligation, mostly because from where they're standing, you look like you're on vacation too. The group text starts in March. By July, you've built someone else's itinerary, driven someone else's rental car route, and somehow paid for someone else's Dole Whip. Say yes once without a boundary, and the invitation becomes an expectation, quietly and permanently. Nobody warns you about this part in advance because on paper it sounds ungrateful to complain about family wanting to visit. In practice, it's the difference between having a home and running an unpaid concierge desk with a guest room attached. There's a price tag attached to the version of this dream where money isn't the obstacle, and we're getting to it. But first, picture the private bus stop. Golden Oak sits on Disney's own property. 980 acres, roughly 450 homes planned, about 30% of them occupied year-round. Residents get a private bus stop into the parks, a 24-hour concierge, VIP tours, access to a private clubhouse built specifically for the community. Homes start around $9 million and run past $14.5 million. Some listings have topped $20 million. HOA fees alone run $816 to $2,830 a month. Added up, and total carrying costs on some of these homes reach $180,000 a year. Wow, and even here at the top of the market, residents still can't actually live inside the park's boundary line. Money buys proximity. It doesn't buy admission. Number 4, some of these subdivisions aren't neighborhoods. They're hotels wearing a residential zip code. Celebration, Florida was Disney's own planned community of tomorrow, until Disney sold the town center to a private equity firm in 2004. By 2016, condo residents were suing, alleging $15 to $20 million in damages from leaking roofs left under blue tarps and black mold running ceiling to floor. One resident, 73 years old at the time, summed it up for reporters: "We bought cabins on the Titanic." The buyer disputed the scale of the damage, putting the real repair cost closer to $5 million. Either number is a long way from the community of tomorrow this town was sold as. This isn't the first time this particular stretch of Florida sold the same dream twice. There's a number from the last time it ended badly, and we'll get to it. But first, here's what's happening right now. Property managers in the Four Corners area, like the patchwork where Osceola, Polk, and Orange counties meet, are reporting a short-term rental market that's been quietly softening for almost 2 years. Champions Gate is down roughly 3%. The Highway 27 corridor is down about 2%. Even Davenport's primary residence market has slipped over 1%. So here's the number. Between 2004 and 2006, this same quarter boomed on vacation home construction, sold hard to buyers who'd never lived a day in Florida. By 2009, the story of Four Corners real estate could be summed up in two words: foreclosure and short sale. Nobody's predicting an exact repeat, but the pattern, buy the dream, watch the math quietly change underneath it, has already happened here once in living memory. Number 5. Near Disney was never one place. A listing might say 15 minutes from the gate. It rarely says which county you're actually buying into: Orange, Osceola, Lake, or Polk, and each one taxes, zones, and educates differently. Windermere Elementary has held an A rating every year since Florida started grading schools. Drive 20 minutes toward Kissimmee or Four Corners, similarly close to the same parks, and the rated schools nearby tend to run lower. Same distance to the castle. Different distance to everything else that actually shapes a kid's day. The school district, the property tax bill, even which trash day you get. And while we're on things closer than you'd think, retention ponds in this part of Florida aren't just landscaping. In 2026, Central Florida saw 3 alligator attacks in 7 days, one of them fatal, along the Econlockhatchee River north of Orlando. The animal involved measured 13 feet. Back in 2021, a gator pulled a dog off the West Orange Trail in Winter Garden. Florida averages roughly 8 unprovoked bites a year, and wildlife officers have removed over 184,000 nuisance alligators statewide since 1997. Your neighborhood pond likely has a resident. It just hasn't introduced itself yet. If you're taking notes on any of this for a move you're actually planning, drop a comment with which point caught you off guard. It genuinely helps decide what we dig into next. Number 6. The tourist traffic isn't like your traffic. A daily commuter has driven the same route enough times to stop thinking about it. A family on I-4 for the first time hasn't. They're squinting at overhead signs while someone in the back seat needs a bathroom, which is how you end up boxed in behind a rental SUV, braking for no reason twice in 1 mile. Multiply that by a few 100,000 cars a day, and the road develops its own weather system. One surge when the gates open, another around dinner and hotel check-in, and the worst of it once fireworks end, and everyone tries to funnel through the same handful of exits at once. It adds up to something measurable. Recent federal crash data analysis ranks I-4 as the deadliest interstate in the country, at roughly 1.54 deaths per mile. It carries more than 200,000 vehicles a day, and a meaningful share of them have no idea where they're going next. There's a workaround, technically: State Road 417, State Road 429, the toll routes that skirt the worst of it. But convenience with a toll tag attached becomes a monthly subscription of its own, and it still doesn't touch the surface streets near the resorts at closing time. Number 7. Florida's famous no-income tax line was never the whole budget. Florida's average annual home insurance premium now sits at $8,292, 181% above the national average. It jumped 18% in a single year, 2025, after roughly 300,000 claims followed Hurricanes Helene and Milton. The national average premium, for comparison, is $2,948. Since 2021, Florida's costs are up 46%, about 3 times the pace of inflation. There's a little relief coming. Citizens, the state's insurer of last resort, is cutting rates an average of 9%, some homeowners by more than 13%, starting June 2026. None of that touches flood coverage either. Standard Florida homeowners policies generally exclude it entirely, so it's a separate line item, a separate quote, and a separate gamble. Then there's what's under the house. Central Florida gets called Sinkhole Alley, though the geology is more specific than the nickname suggests. Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties actually see fewer sinkholes than Pasco, Hernando, or Hillsborough, because the limestone here sits deeper underground. The catch: standard homeowners policies only cover sudden, catastrophic ground collapse. The slow kind, the kind that just quietly cracks a foundation over years, usually isn't covered at all. Nobody mentions that at closing. Number 8. The weather doesn't pause for your moving in date. Florida sees more lightning than any other state in the country, and Central Florida sits near the center of that pattern. Afternoon storms that build fast and clear just as fast, shutting down pools, golf courses, and outdoor plants on a schedule of their own. The heat does its own kind of slow damage. A garage here wasn't built to store paint, batteries, or electronics through an Orlando August, and humidity can turn one missed roof leak into a mold problem faster than most new homeowners expect. Hurricane season runs June through November. Living inland doesn't cancel it. It just changes which parts of the prep list actually apply to you. The generator test, the shutters, the week of canned food and water you hope you never need, the photographs of everything you own taken in case you have to prove it existed. Every longtime Florida homeowner keeps this list somewhere. New arrivals usually build it the hard way after the first storm rather than before it. Number 9. Near Disney isn't near Orlando. Epic Universe opened in May 2025, and getting ready for it meant building a $285 to $315 million extension of Kirkman Road, anticipating 5 to 9 million visitors in its first year alone. That's one project. A short drive away, a 220-acre development in Kissimmee is planned to bring an entirely new Nickelodeon-branded resort into the same already crowded corridor. Central Florida's population is projected to grow from 4.5 million to more than 6 million people by 2030. And Osceola County alone has roughly 50,000 new homes planned alongside a $2.1 billion extension of its own parkway. A house that's 15 minutes from a park gate can still be 45 minutes from the office, the pediatrician, and the grocery store you actually use. Because near Disney was measuring the wrong kind of distance the whole time. The parks are the one destination in your life that isn't disrupted by any of this growth. Everything else you actually need on a Tuesday is. Number 10. Moving closer doesn't make the parks free. It just makes spending feel more casual. An annual pass still has blockout dates. A spontaneous dinner still needs a reservation half the time. Hey, Genie Plus and Lightning Lane turned "let's just go" into a line item. And locals describe the same slow realization. The closer you live, the easier it becomes to treat a theme park ticket like a Tuesday errand instead of the once-a-year splurge it used to be. Pass tiers, blockout calendars, and reservation rules change often enough that longtime pass holders keep a running list just to remember which version of the rules applies this year. The bubble doesn't usually pop all at once. It just quietly changes what counts as normal, until a family that moved here to save money on vacations finds itself spending more on the parks than it ever did visiting from somewhere else entirely. So here's what the fantasy never mentions. In November 2025, Florida pollsters surveyed 1,000 adults across the state and found that roughly half had thought seriously about leaving, about a quarter of them seriously enough to call it a real plan. Among adults 18 to 24, that number jumped to 72%. This isn't a Disney statistic, it's a Florida one. But it's the same math running underneath every point on this list. The same math that put a former cast member in her car, and the same math quietly deciding, right now, whether the family down the street stays or goes. One woman actually lived the whole dream first before any of these numbers meant anything to her. She'd wanted this since she was a kid. She did the Disney College program, then moved to Celebration as an adult, walked to work on Main Street, ate Disney desserts most nights. 3 years in, she moved back home. Not because the park stopped being magical, because the parks, it turned out, couldn't replace what the people back home gave her. The birthdays she wasn't there for, the ordinary Tuesdays with family that a theme park was never built to provide. So before you drop a pin on a house near the castle, ask yourself the question she eventually had to answer for herself. Are you moving towards something or just away from something you haven't named yet? Either answer is fine. Just know which one it is before you sign anything. Because every point on this list, the traffic, the taxes, the alligators in the retention pond, the guest room that quietly became a second job, all of it is survivable. What isn't easily replaceable is the ordinary Tuesday with the people who knew you before any of this started. If this saved you from finding any of this out the hard way, That's genuinely why we make these. So hit like, tell us your own Disney area story in the comments, and subscribe if you want the next one, because there's a lot more sitting just under the surface of this place than anyone puts in a listing.